Well, hello everybody. This weekend I'm going to make one of these bird baths. My neighbor has this one in his yard, and it's probably many years old. And I decided that I wanted to make one of these. So I went over to the local gravel pit and spent an afternoon picking up these stones. I wanted a variety of colored stones and some white ones, and had some nice stones over there. Well, then I went down and got my mortar cement. When I got home, it was no good, so I had to take that back. That kind of stalled things out. But I got the cement, and now we're getting the mortar mixed up and ready to go. Now I use type N mortar cement, and experience over the years has taught me to get that mortar just right. You don't want it too wet or too dry. It's got to be just right. It should feel kind of sticky. So I've got my stones on a table over there, so it's easy to pick them off and bring them over here to this little round piece of plywood that I've got covered up with plastic. And so we'll start out by going around and putting the mortar down, put a kind of a bed of it down, then lay some stones in. And it's just totally random as I go around this thing. I'm thinking that it should be about 4 or 5 inches high on the outside in order to give the bowl enough mortar, enough cement there to be solid in the middle. Now when you make these bird baths, you don't want to make them too deep. The birds like a nice shallow area. Oftentimes you see the birds in mud puddles and alongside the road and so on, and that water may only be an inch deep, and so we don't need to make this too high on the outside, but high enough so that you can get a little bowl of water in the center there. So I'll just keep working my way around the outside here and laying those stones in there. And here I'm starting to add the mortar to the center, and you can work it around a little bit, and that will make that mortar wetter in the center, so you can work it around into the stones. Oh, here I got a little piece of chicken wire. I figured I might put a little wire in this thing, add a little bit of stiffness to it here. It might keep it from cracking. This is all a great experiment. This is the first one I've ever made, so we'll see. But we'll go through and add that cement until I've got it just about right, and then start to clean up those stones so that we can see those pretty stones. Now I've got to let this sit for an hour or two before I continue. You can't really do too much while that mortar is wet. So we'll let things dry out and then I'll come back. So after a couple hours I came back and cleaned it up pretty thoroughly, and this is what it's going to look like. I've already decided on the next one that I make, I'll make a few changes. I think I need a lot more smaller stones that I can fill in between those larger ones. Just pack it in more with a lot more stones. But this will work just fine. So we'll let it set for about a week. Let it dry out. Now I've started to think about how I want to make my center column to hold up that bird bath. And you can see in the neighbors here, he's got quite a large column there. And then at the bottom, he's got it flanged out there so that it'll add quite a bit of stability to hold that big top. Alright, so I'm going up to my mason sand pile here, and we'll get another batch of mortar made, and then we'll get started making the base that'll hold the column. Now here I'm making this base, and I'm going to run a pipe up through the center of that column so that I can put a pipe flange on the bottom of my bird bath and set that down on that pipe right there. You'll see what I mean later. But now today I'm going to make this base that will support my column. Okay, it's a new day. Yesterday was Memorial Day, so I took the day off and let that base really set up nice. And now I'm going to start that column. And so I'll start out at the bottom here with 4 big stones, and then I'll fill in between with these little ones. And that'll be my first course. We just have to keep laying these stones up as we make this column till I get to the top of that pipe. So we'll throw some mud on here and we'll get those stones ready to set in there. You want to have this a little bit wider at the bottom, and then it'll kind of taper as it goes up. But it's pretty much again, it's a random deal here. I don't fuss around too much trying to find the right stone and so on. I figured it'll just be kind of work of art here as when I finish up, being so random. I'm not going to worry if the pillar is uniform or anything. That doesn't matter. Just so it's solid, and that Birdbath can sit on top of it. So here we go. We'll get all the stones in the bottom here, and then I'll go around the outside and kind of squeeze that mortar in there, pack it in there. And I learned that you don't want to play in that mortar too much, or you'll have a soupy mess. And so you have to just kind of get it the way you want it, and then it's got to set so that it starts to cure a little bit, and then you can do a little cleanup and so on. And I decided to wrap some wire around those stones. You can see that there, to hold those stones from spreading out as I add stones up above. So here we go with the second course of stone, and I kind of staggered this second course so it's over the seams between the stones down below, and then I'll force some mortar right in those joints. Yeah, I wanted to lay up this whole center pillar here, and the only way that I could see to do it was to get some wire and wrap around each course as I go to hold that together. So right now I'm just kind of fitting these stones in and making sure that I've got mortar all around. And that's about all you want to do right there. Now you can see that wire that I wrapped around the second course. So I'm on the third row of stones here now. And I kind of set them up there dry, and then go back and throw some mortar in and set them in the way I want it. Here we go with that wire, and this is kind of tricky business here because the rocks are all different sizes and shapes and so on, and so you've got to kind of wrap that wire around so that it catches on something there on each one of the stones. And I've had it all on there, and it seemed to be holding good, and then all of a sudden it pops off. But I've gone back and made sure that wire is holding those rocks, because as I go up, there's a lot of weight there, and it could squeeze a row out. You'd have a disaster. So here we go on to the next row. And I thought I'd get that wire just right. And you can see it kind of It's hard to get it on there and get it tightened up without it popping off. It's about the only way that I could see to hold this thing together. Kind of acts like a form, you know. If you're pouring a concrete pillar, you'd have a tube or some kind of a form that you'd fill, and that would hold everything together. So here we go. I've got part way up, and I decided to take a little break and wipe a little of that mortar off those stones, begin to expose the stones. And I've been at it here, I don't know, an hour or two, and so it's set up enough down below that I can take those wires off and begin to clean up a little bit. And I just take a wet sponge and start working that mortar in between the stones and wiping off the faces of each stone there. It's quite a process. So I've already learned a lot, so when I build the next one, it should go a lot faster and maybe even have a little better job too. But like I said, it really doesn't matter, because we're talking about a bird bath here, and no two would be alike when you're building them this way, that's for sure. So there's no right and wrong way. I learned from my dad that you never want to be afraid to start a project. You never want to be afraid of not knowing how to do it. You just dive right in and learn as you go. And, you know, what's the worst that could happen? You'd wind up taking the whole mess and dumping it over a bank somewhere and start over again. But over the years, I've kind of learned that you can't be afraid of attempting some kind of a project. Anyway, got it cleaned up pretty good there, at least the lower part. I gotta let that upper part dry some more before I work on that. Well, good morning everybody, another brand new day. Last night I had a bit of a catastrophe when I went to work on that upper part. It fell apart and stones fell out on the floor, and so I had to redo it. Right here is that pipe and that flange that I was telling you about, and that slides down into that plastic pipe that runs all the way through that column and through the base. And right there is the flange that I will bolt to the bottom of the bird bath. Got to let the bird bath here set another week or so. It's got to be good and hard before you bolt that flange on the bottom. And then that pipe screws into it, and then that goes down inside the column. Now that plastic pipe runs all the way through that column, as we mentioned, and so I'll drive a pipe into the ground and I'll set that base over that pipe, and that'll keep it from tipping over. And then I'll put the bird bath on. I knew this thing was going to be pretty heavy, and so I wanted a way to anchor it. And I've used those pipe flanges on bird feeders that I've made before. And so that's how I got that idea. Well, I wanted to show you the bird bath setting out in the garden here, but the video's getting pretty long, so I thought I'd walk down through and show you where I plan to put the bird bath. Then later on I'll do another video. And there's some lilies coming. I thought I'd put it right in this flower bed right here, right next to those cone flowers. Alright my friends, thanks for watching my bird bath video. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.